The massive ships appeared without warning. They emerged from hyperspace like dark clouds blocking the stars, their metal hulls reflecting the distant sunlight. There were hundreds of them, each larger than Earth's biggest cities. The Draconian Empire had arrived. Earth's early warning systems detected them first. Within minutes, every screen on the planet switched to an emergency broadcast. People stopped in the streets, families huddled around their TVs, and soldiers at their posts watched with tight faces as the message began to play. A creature appeared on the screens. It looked like a cross between a dragon and a human, with scales that shimmered like polished metal and eyes that glowed with an inner fire. When it spoke, its voice was deep and smooth, but filled with threat. "People of Earth," the Draconian commander said, "your primitive world has been chosen to join our glorious empire. You will surrender your resources and accept your place as our servants. If you refuse, we will destroy your civilization. You have 48 hours to decide." The message ended, leaving billions in stunned silence. In Washington, D.C., the United Earth Defense Council gathered in their underground chamber. Military generals, political leaders, and scientific advisors from every major nation sat around a massive table. Emergency lights cast red shadows on their faces. "We can't fight them," General Rodriguez said, looking at the holographic display showing the Draconian fleet. "Their smallest ship could probably destroy a continent." "Then we surrender?" asked the Chinese representative, her voice sharp with anger. "Become slaves to these monsters." President Sarah Mitchell stood up slowly. She was tall and thin, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too many crises. But now, strangely, she was smiling. "No," she said, "we give them exactly what they expect. We play the part of the scared, primitive species." The room erupted in confused voices until she raised her hand for silence. "Send them this message," she continued. "Tell them we accept their superiority and request 48 hours to prepare for a proper surrender ceremony. Tell them we want to show proper respect to our new masters." Admiral Chen from the Pacific Fleet leaned forward. "Madam President, you seem calm about this." "Indeed." She pressed a button on the table, and a new hologram appeared. It showed something deep underwater, something huge and geometric that clearly wasn't natural. "Because humanity has been preparing for this day for a very long time." In orbit, the Draconian commander received Earth's response. He played it again, frowning. The humans were too calm, too accepting. In his 1,000 years of conquering worlds, he had never seen this reaction. Usually there was either fierce resistance or immediate, panicked surrender. "Analysis," he commanded his science officer. "Their technology is primitive, Commander. No space fleet. Limited nuclear weapons. No energy shields. They cannot hope to resist us." And yet, the commander's tail twitched nervously. Something feels wrong. He watched Earth rotating slowly below them, its blue oceans covering most of the planet. Such a wet, primitive world. But why did looking at those oceans make his scales itch with unease? "Maintain battle positions," he ordered. "Monitor everything. If they try anything—" "Commander," his officer interrupted, "they're organizing a surrender ceremony. They want to do it properly, with full honors to the Empire. They're even preparing gifts." The commander laughed, but it sounded forced even to his own ears. "See, just primitive beings trying to save themselves. Nothing to worry about." But as he stared at those vast oceans below, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something important, something that would change everything. He had no idea that deep beneath those peaceful-looking waters, humanity's greatest secret was waiting. And in 48 hours, the Draconian Empire would learn why you should never judge a species by its appearance. Dr. Sarah Chen wiped sweat from her forehead as she stared at the massive screen in front of her. She stood in a control room unlike anything the public had ever seen, buried 2 miles beneath the Pacific Ocean. Around her, dozens of scientists and engineers worked at their stations, their faces lit by blue light from underwater cameras. "Time check," she called out. 39 hours until surrender ceremony. Someone answered. Sarah touched the strange metal hanging around her neck. It wasn't really a medal. It was much older than human civilization. They had found it 20 years ago, in the underwater ruins that changed everything. Dr. Chen. A young engineer named Mike rushed up to her. The quantum readings from the Atlantic station are ready. She followed him to his computer. On the screen, strange patterns pulsed and shifted like living things. Most scientists would say these patterns were impossible, but Sarah knew better. She had learned to read them years ago, when they first discovered that Earth's oceans weren't just water. They were something far more special. Send the activation signal to all stations, she ordered. It's time to wake everything up. Across Earth's oceans, hidden structures began to power up. They looked like giant crystal pyramids, but they were built from technology that humanity was only beginning to understand. The ancient civilization that built them had left them sleeping in the deepest parts of the oceans, waiting for someone smart enough to find them. Sarah remembered the day they found the first one. She had been a young scientist then, part of a deep-sea research mission. They thought they were studying unusual energy readings. Instead, they found proof that Earth had once been home to beings so advanced they could bend space itself. Now, looking at the live feeds from underwater cameras around the world, she could see the pyramids beginning to glow with soft blue light. Energy readings were exactly where they should be. Everything was working perfectly. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from her sister Maria, who didn't know anything about Sarah's real work. "Are you safe?" Maria asked. "These aliens are everywhere on the news." "I'm fine," Sarah typed back. "Don't worry." She hated lying to her family, but this secret was too important. Suddenly, alarms started blaring. Red lights flashed through the control room. "Report," Sarah shouted. "Draconian ships are moving," called out the radar operator. "They're spreading out around the planet. Some are entering the atmosphere." Sarah grabbed the microphone for the facility speakers. "Everyone stay calm. This is what we expected. Continue the activation sequence." She brought up the main view screen, showing the Draconian ships moving into position. They looked like massive dark arrows pointing at Earth's heart. Their weapons could destroy cities in seconds, but they had no idea what was about to happen to them. Dr. Chen called another scientist. "We're detecting energy spikes from the ruins. The quantum field is growing." Sarah smiled. The ancient civilization had left more than just sleeping pyramids. They had transformed Earth's oceans into something impossible, a network of quantum gates that could fold space itself. For 20 years, humanity had carefully studied and prepared this gift, knowing that one day they would need it. "Send the test pulse," she ordered. Deep beneath the waves, one of the smaller pyramids flared brightly. A bubble of distorted space appeared around it, just for a second. Water swirled strangely, and their instruments showed a brief hole in reality itself. "Test successful," reported Mike. "All systems are ready for full activation." Sarah looked at the clock. 38 hours until the surrender ceremony. More than enough time to make sure everything was perfect. The Draconians thought they were dealing with a primitive species that would quietly accept slavery. They had no idea that humanity had been preparing for this moment for decades. "Begin final preparations," she said. "And someone get me more coffee. It's going to be a long night." Above them, the ocean kept its secrets. And somewhere up there, the Draconian commander was about to learn that sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun or a bomb. It's the truth you never saw coming. 24 hours remained until the surrender ceremony. In the underwater facility, Dr. Sarah Chen closed her eyes, remembering the day that changed everything. The memory was as clear as if it had happened yesterday instead of 20 years ago. She had been young, eager, and deep underwater in a research submarine. That day, they found the first ruins. Not just ancient buildings, but something alive with energy after thousands of years. The walls had been covered with strange symbols that moved when you looked at them. And in the center chamber, they found the device. Dr. Chen. Mike's voice brought her back to the present. You should see this. On his screen, a 3D map showed hundreds of Draconian ships moving into position around Earth. They looked like a net of metal, ready to trap the planet. They're being careful, Sarah said. Too bad they're looking in the wrong direction. She touched a control, and the map changed to show something else. Glowing points of light in every ocean, each one marking an ancient device. Humanity had found 42 of them over the years. Each one was a key to unlocking the ocean's true power. Signal from Pacific Station 3, called out Lisa, one of the younger scientists. The quantum field is reaching critical mass. Sarah nodded. Just like the simulations, start the synchronization sequence. Around the world, other facilities just like this one were preparing. Each one controlled part of the network, but they all had to work together perfectly. One mistake could tear holes in space-time itself. In her pocket, Sarah felt her phone buzz again. Another message from her sister. They're showing the alien ships on TV. They're so big. How can we fight them? Sarah didn't reply. Soon, everyone would know the answer. Draconian ships entering lower atmosphere, announced the radar operator. They're positioning for the ceremony. Through the facility's cameras, Sarah watched the ancient pyramids pulse with stronger light. Energy readings were climbing. In the water around them, strange patterns began to appear. Quantum pockets, places where space itself grew thin. Dr. Chen, Mike called out, his voice shaking slightly. Remember when we found those records? About what happened to the original civilization? Sarah nodded. The truth had been hidden in the moving symbols on the ruins' walls. The ancient civilization hadn't died out. They had used this same technology to step outside normal space. They had evolved beyond physical bodies, becoming something else entirely. They left these devices for a reason, she said. They knew someone would need them someday. Alarms started ringing again. On the main screen, more Draconian ships appeared. They were launching smaller vessels, probably preparing for the grand ceremony where Earth would supposedly surrender. All stations report ready, Lisa announced. Quantum network is stable. Sarah looked at the clock. 23 hours left. She pressed a button, opening a channel to all underwater facilities. This is Dr. Chen. Begin final powered-up sequence. Remember your training. We've practiced this 1,000 times. She watched as energy levels rose across the network. The ancient devices were working together, turning Earth's oceans into something impossible. A web of quantum gates that could trap and redirect space itself. Ma'am, called another operator. We're getting strange readings from the quantum field. It's like something's watching us. Sarah smiled. She had expected this. Using the ancient technology at full power would attract attention, perhaps even from those who built it. Focus on the mission, she ordered. We deal with one impossible thing at a time. Above them, the Draconian ships continued their slow descent, weapons ready, completely unaware of what waited beneath the waves. They had conquered 1,000 worlds, but they had never faced anything like this. All stations synchronized. Lisa reported, "We're ready." Sarah looked at the final checklist on her screen. Everything was green. Hours of work remained, but now success felt certain. Humanity would not surrender. Instead, they would show the galaxy something new. What happens when you corner a species that has friends in impossible places? Good, she said. Now we show them what Earth's oceans can really do. The Draconian Supreme Commander stood on his flagship's bridge, watching Earth through the massive viewing screen. His scales glittered in the dim light as he prepared to accept humanity's surrender. Behind him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the thousands of ships now surrounding the planet. Begin the ceremony broadcast, he ordered. On Earth, in the underwater facility, Dr. Sarah Chen watched the Draconian commander appear on their screens. His voice boomed through the speakers. People of Earth, the time has come to accept your place in our empire. Your leaders will now. Now, Sarah shouted. She pressed her hand against the ancient control panel. Around the world, other facility leaders did the same thing. Deep beneath the oceans, 42 quantum devices activated at once. The effect was instant and incredible. The oceans began to glow, not just in small areas, but everywhere. A blue light spread across the planet's waters like they had caught fire with cold flame. In space, the Draconian crews stared in confusion at their instruments. "Commander," a Draconian officer shouted, "energy readings are off the charts. The planet's oceans are impossible." The commander's eyes widened as he watched the waters of Earth transform. The quantum network was turning the entire ocean into a weapon, but not one that fired energy or bullets. Instead, it was changing space itself. In the underwater facility, Sarah worked quickly at her station. "All stations report. Is the quantum field stable? Pacific Station stable. Atlantic Station holding. Indian Ocean Station at full power. Arctic Station synchronized." Around the Draconian ships, space began to twist. At first, it was subtle. Their sensors showed small distortions, like ripples in calm water. Then the ripples grew stronger. "What trickery is this?" the commander demanded, his tail lashing back and forth. "Scan those energy patterns." "Sir, we can't. Our sensors can't understand what's happening. It's like reality itself is being rewritten around us." In the water below, the ancient devices pulsed with power. They weren't just machines. They were keys, unlocking doors in space that shouldn't exist. And now those doors were opening all around the Draconian fleet. First wave of quantum pockets forming. Mike announced in the facility, "Ready to trap the smaller ships." Sarah nodded. On her screen, she could see it happening. Hundreds of Draconian ships were finding themselves caught in bubbles of twisted space. They couldn't move forward or backward. Their weapons fired but hit nothing. They were trapped between moments of time, between layers of space. The commander watched in horror as his fleet began to disappear, ship by ship, not destroyed. Something worse. They were being removed from normal space, caught in quantum bubbles they couldn't escape. "Impossible," he roared. "These primitives can't have this technology. No species has mastered quantum space manipulation." But the evidence was right in front of him. His mighty fleet, the pride of the Draconian Empire, was being trapped like insects in amber. And it was happening faster now. The quantum pockets appearing more quickly as Earth's oceans glowed brighter and brighter. In the facility, Sarah felt the ancient metal around her neck grow warm. The symbols on it were moving, shifting faster than ever before. The quantum network wasn't just working. It was working better than they had hoped. 50% of enemy fleet contained. Lisa reported, "No ships have broken free from the quantum pockets. All stations maintain power levels." Sarah ordered, "Don't let them escape." The Draconian commander stared at his tactical display in disbelief. His ships were vanishing, trapped in spaces between spaces. And now he could see something else. Patterns in Earth's oceans that looked familiar. Impossible patterns that he had seen only in ancient legends. "No," he whispered. "It can't be. This world, this primitive world." He finally understood. Earth wasn't just another planet to conquer. It was something far more important. A world that still held the technology of those who had come before, those who had transcended normal space itself. And humanity had learned how to use it. Alarms screamed through the underwater facility. Red warning lights flashed everywhere as Dr. Sarah Chen raced between control stations. The quantum network was working too well. Maybe too well. "Status report," she shouted over the noise. "Quantum effects are spreading faster than we calculated." Mike's face was pale as he worked at his computer. "The pockets are starting to merge." On the main screen, they could see what was happening. The quantum bubbles trapping the Draconian ships were growing larger, touching each other, combining into bigger distortions in space. It looked like holes were being torn in reality itself. Above them, on the Draconian command ship, panic was spreading. Emergency lights flashed as systems began to fail. "Commander," an officer screamed. "We've lost contact with the Third Fleet. The quantum distortions are consuming everything." The Supreme Commander gripped his command chair with clawed hands. Around his ship, space itself was breaking down. Through the viewing screens, he could see his mighty vessels being swallowed by swirling voids of twisted spacetime. "Our weapons have no effect," another officer reported. "Energy beams pass right through the distortions. Missiles disappear into them. Nothing works." In the underwater facility, Sarah worked frantically at her station. The ancient metal around her neck was burning hot now, its symbols spinning wildly. "All stations, reduce power," she ordered through the communication system. "The quantum cascade is spreading too fast." Pacific Station 3 reporting critical overload. Atlantic Station can't contain the field. Indian Ocean Station showing dangerous readings. Mike rushed to Sarah's side. "Dr. Chen, look at this." He pointed to his screen, where a simulation showed the quantum effects spreading beyond their targets. "If we don't stop this soon, the distortions could reach Earth's surface." Sarah knew he was right. The ancient technology was more powerful than they had expected. It wasn't just trapping ships anymore. It was threatening to tear open permanent holes in spacetime. On the Draconian flagship, systems were failing one by one. Emergency containment fields flickered and died. The mighty ship's hull groaned as space twisted around it. "Commander," a science officer reported, voice shaking. "These readings, they matched the legends. The stories about the ancients who could fold space itself." The commander stared at the swirling chaos around his ship. The humans, they found their technology. They learned to use it. For the first time in his long life, he felt true fear. In the facility, Sarah made a decision. Begin emergency shutdown sequence. "But Dr. Chen," Lisa protested, "the Draconian fleet isn't fully contained yet. If we don't stop now, we could lose control completely." Sarah's fingers flew over her controls. The quantum cascade could tear apart everything. Their fleet, our oceans, maybe even Earth itself. The ancient metal grew even hotter. Sarah looked down and saw the symbols had stopped spinning. Instead, they were forming new patterns, patterns she had never seen before. "All stations, initiate Protocol Omega," she ordered. "Shut down all devices except the primary containment grid." Around the world, facility crews scrambled to power down the ancient machines, but the quantum effects weren't stopping. The distortions in space continued to grow and merge. "It's not working," Mike shouted. "The reaction is self-sustaining." Sarah stared at her screen in horror. The quantum network they had worked so hard to control was running wild. Above them, reality itself was coming apart at the seams. "There's only one thing left to try," she said quietly, looking at the strange new patterns on her metal. "The ancients must have had a way to control this. They wouldn't have left this technology without a failsafe." The facility shook as another quantum surge passed through the ocean. Time was running out. Humanity had found a way to defeat the Draconian fleet, but now they faced an even bigger challenge: stopping their own weapon before it destroyed everything they were trying to protect. Dr. Sarah Chen stared at the ancient metal around her neck. The symbols had stopped spinning and now formed a clear pattern, one that looked like a key. As the facility shook around her, she suddenly understood what she had to do. "Clear the main chamber," she ordered. "Everyone out except essential personnel." The quantum distortions were growing stronger. On the screens, they could see the Draconian fleet trapped in bubbles of twisted space. Some ships were starting to break apart as reality itself pulled them in different directions. "Dr. Chen," Mike called out, still at his station, "the commander's flagship is hailing us. They're broadcasting on all frequencies." Sarah nodded. "Put them through." The Draconian Supreme Commander's face appeared on the main screen. His scales were dull with fear, his proud bearing gone. Behind him, his bridge was in chaos as equipment sparked and failed. "Humans," he said, his voice shaking, "we surrender." Please, save my people. Sarah looked at the metal again, then at her team. Can we send a message to all Draconian ships at once? Yes, Lisa answered, but the quantum interference is getting worse. We don't have much time. Sarah grabbed the microphone. Her voice would reach every Draconian ship still caught in the quantum pockets. Attention Draconian fleet, we don't want to destroy you. We never did. If you swear to leave Earth's space and never return, we will try to save your ships. But you must decide quickly. The commander's eyes widened. You would show mercy after we threatened to enslave your world. Because we're not like you, Sarah answered. Now, do you accept? The facility shook harder. Warning lights flashed as more quantum pockets merged and grew. Time's running out, Mike shouted. The cascade is approaching critical levels. The commander looked at something off-screen, then straightened his spine. By my authority as Supreme Commander of the Draconian Fleet, I accept your terms. Save my people, and we will never threaten Earth again. Sarah touched the metal. Its surface was cool now, waiting. Everyone hold on. I'm going to try something. She pressed the metal against her control panel. The ancient symbols began to glow, matching patterns appearing on screens across the facility. It was like the metal was talking to the quantum network, speaking in a language older than human civilization. Power levels dropping. Lisa called out. The quantum pockets are starting to stabilize. All stations report. Sarah ordered. What's happening out there? Pacific Station showing reduced quantum activity. Atlantic distortions are shrinking. Indian Ocean readings returning to normal. On the screens, they could see it happening. The swirling voids in space were shrinking, becoming stable. The Draconian ships were no longer being torn apart. They were being held safely in contained bubbles of quantum space. The metal, Mike said in wonder. It's not just a key. It's a control system. Sarah nodded. The ancients built in a failsafe. They knew someone might need to stop the quantum cascade. She looked up at the commander's image. Are your ships stable? The commander checked his readings. Yes. The quantum effects are no longer damaging our vessels. He paused, then bowed his head slightly. We owe you our lives. Remember that, Sarah said firmly. Remember that humans chose to save you when we could have let you be destroyed. Remember that mercy can be stronger than power. The commander nodded slowly. We will remember. I give you my word. The Draconian Empire will speak of Earth with respect, not as a target for conquest, but as a world that taught us wisdom. Sarah looked at her team, saw the pride in their faces. They had not only protected Earth, but had done it without becoming as cruel as their enemies. Begin controlled release of the Draconian ships, she ordered. Let them go, one by one, starting with the smallest vessels. As they worked to safely free the alien fleet, Sarah thought about everything that had happened. The ancient civilization had left them more than just powerful technology. They had left them a choice, to use that power with wisdom and mercy. Today, humanity had passed that test. 3 days after the Draconian fleet left Earth's space, Dr. Sarah Chen stood in the underwater facility's main chamber, watching the ancient devices pulse with gentle blue light. The crisis was over, but something had changed. Earth would never be the same. Dr. Chen. Mike rushed into the chamber, holding a tablet. You need to see this. On the screen, news channels from around the world were showing the same images. The Draconian fleet's departure, recorded by space stations and satellites. The public was finally learning the truth about how Earth had defended itself. How are people taking it? Sarah asked. They're calling it the Ocean Shield, Mike said, smiling. Everyone wants to know how we did it. The president is going to make an announcement about the ancient technology. Sarah touched the metal around her neck. Since it had helped them stop the quantum cascade, the symbols hadn't stopped moving. They were forming new patterns every hour, like the metal was trying to tell them something. Dr. Chen. Lisa's voice came through the speakers. We're picking up strange readings from the Pacific Device Network. Sarah and Mike rushed to the control room. On the main screen, energy patterns danced across the ocean floor. The ancient devices were active again, but not like before. This time, they were receiving something. "It's a signal," Lisa said, her eyes wide. "Coming through the quantum network itself. And it's aimed at your metal." The metal grew warm against Sarah's skin. Its symbols began to glow, matching the patterns on the screen. Suddenly, a hologram appeared in the center of the room. The figure was tall and made of shifting light. It looked almost human, but not quite. More like energy given form. When it spoke, its voice was like music. "Children of Earth," it said, "you have passed the test." Everyone in the control room stared in amazement. Sarah stepped forward. "You're one of the ancients." The figure nodded. "We left our technology in Earth's oceans long ago, waiting for a species that would use it wisely. You found our gifts. You learned to use them. And when the moment came, you chose mercy over vengeance." "The quantum network," Sarah said. "The metal. You were watching us all along." "We watch many worlds," the ancient replied. "Few pass our test. Few understand that power must be balanced with wisdom." The figure gestured, and new holograms appeared. Images of stars and galaxies. "You are ready now, ready to learn more." Mike stepped forward. "More? You mean there's more technology out there?" The ancient's light form rippled with what might have been laughter. "The quantum network was just the beginning. Earth's oceans hold many more secrets. And beyond your world," the hologram expanded, showing countless stars. "The galaxy awaits." Sarah felt her heart racing. "You're offering to teach us." "We offer to guide you," the ancient corrected. "Humanity must find its own path. But perhaps that path can lead to where we are." The figure's light pulsed brighter. "Your world is known now. Other species will come, some friendly, some not. You showed wisdom with the Draconians. Remember that wisdom as you step into the larger galaxy." The hologram began to fade. "Watch for our signals," the ancient said. "We will send more messages through the quantum network. Earth's oceans still have many gifts to share." As the figure disappeared, new symbols appeared on Sarah's metal. She recognized them now. Coordinates, pointing to other ancient sites deep in Earth's oceans. "Well," she said, looking at her amazed team, "it looks like we have more work to do." Above the facility, sunlight sparkled on the ocean waves. The water looked peaceful, ordinary. But now everyone knew the truth. Earth's oceans were special, holding secrets and power beyond imagination. Humanity had taken its first steps into a larger universe, armed not just with advanced technology, but with the wisdom to use it well. And somewhere out there, the ancients were watching, ready to teach those who had proved themselves worthy of greater knowledge.